everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Emily and I do handbag updates, reviews, unboxings, comparisons. I also do a lot of traveling, so I like to sprinkle that in my channel. I am actually talking about a travel related topic today. It's actually something that's been requested and I have been putting it off for a long time. And the reason is because I've been trying to gather more information before letting you know. Most of the items that I do purchase anywhere on trips, at home, are generally clothing, shoes, handbags, jewelry. So when I do talk about these items, they're usually those items. Now, of course, these tips I'm about to share with you of what I've known when I travel and when I buy items could be applicable to a lot of different items, but I just wanted to put that out there. So what we're going to talk about today is buying luxury items or more expensive items out of the country when you're on vacation and then bringing them back home. And this is a very interesting topic to me because I do like to, shop a lot, like to travel a lot, and then I like to save money. So these are all things that kind of revolve around this topic. I do want to put a disclaimer out there that I am not a professional. I don't do legal custom, I don't do custom law. I don't have any background experience on any of this, but I do want to share it with you, what I have learned from reading online, what I've experienced while doing, going to a different country and then coming back, and then also what I've heard other people, whether it's my friends, family, or whatever, have told me when they have come back. So just wanted to put that out there. I do want this to be helpful and informational because before I go to a different country, I also like to learn and get tips about what to look out for. Of course, even after hearing that, I like to do my own research just to be more thorough, but yeah, this is hopefully going to be fun and enjoyable. And I think above all else, when you go buy stuff outside, when you're on trips, it's supposed to be enhancing your trip, so you should have fun. But let's get to some of the tips that could help you save some money so that you don't come back home and be like, oh man, I should have done that when I was there, kind of thing. So how to save money. Money can be saved when you get VAT back. Now, VAT is a valued added tax, and so different countries charge different type of tax, and then different countries also allow you to receive these taxed value back if you're leaving the country with the goods. And not all countries do this, not all countries tax. So you kind of have to look at which countries you're going to travel to. I am going to split this video into two parts. Part one is going to be buying the items in a different country. Now, I am from the US, so of course when I talk about this, it's when I leave the US to another country and buy something. And then the part two is when I come back into the US with the items. So if you're not from the US, then the second part may not be as applicable to you, but hopefully the first part in the different countries I'm going to talk about, it could still help you as a traveler to those countries. So part one is, like I said, on what happens when I go to different countries to buy items. I'm going to split this into a few countries that I've been to. So the first one is the EU, which includes it's also the UK, at least for now. And then I'm going to talk about Hong Kong and then Australia. So those are the three major areas that I've been to that I've bought something from and that I try to claim tax back. And I'm going to just kind of focus on those. Actually, those are the most popular areas, I think, anyway, for when people go shopping, at least from the US. I think Japan would be a good one too, but I have not bought anything that expensive where I needed to look at the tax or the refund, so I cannot touch on that. There are many countries that are part of the European Union currently, and so they are all treated together as like one entity, at least for tax purposes, sales tax purposes, which means when you get your tax back, you can claim it all at the same time, and you claim it at the last port of departure. What I mean by that is if you are going to go from England, UK, to Ireland, and then to Paris, France, and then say to Sweden, you don't claim until Sweden when you fly back to the US, because even though you're flying from country to country, you're only going to claim it at the last country that's in the EU, if that makes sense. So you kind of have to look at the countries that you're going to and whether that's part of the EU. Okay, so in the EU, even though they're all together, different countries charge different taxes. So for the most part, they're 20%. So Ireland, um, England, Paris, France, Italy, they all charge 20%. However, when I went to Sweden last year, they charged me 25%. So it does vary, but you should be able to get whatever you paid for in tax back when you take the items new and unused out of the country, for the most part. And why I say this is because you don't always get the full amount. There's always some sort of caveat, and I'll try to touch up on this later. So what you do when you go shopping and you want to take advantage of the tax refund is that you should probably ask whichever store you're shopping in if they have a tax refund scheme. And each store could have a different policy. So sometimes you need to spend a minimum of like €100 or £200 or something like that. And a lot of the times they'll also tell you that you cannot do tax refund on certain items. I remember hearing that children's clothing cannot be taxed, refunded back because they don't charge tax on it. I've also heard that food and consumables are not refundable either. So because you can consume it. So I think that's why. So I've not been able to use it for those items, but when you shop at the store, you can definitely ask them and they'll give you that information. So once you know, you go shopping, you do your thing, and then at the checkout, you tell them you want to get a tax refund. And you usually should provide your passport, and then they'll print out a really long receipt. Usually it has things for you to fill out. In those fill out things, please fill it out very carefully, because sometimes if you fill it out wrong, you don't get the refund. But they usually give this receipt in an envelope. The envelope is based on where you're supposed to take it to. So some stores use different tax refund companies. So the most popular one that I've seen is Global Blue and Premier Tax Free. And those are the two main ones that I've seen. And so they would put the receipt with the form inside the envelope and then they hand it to you. Usually you fill it out at home or whatever. Definitely don't do it at the airport, do it at home, because there's just too much going on. And then you bring all of that, including the items, with you to the airport. Now, there's a caveat, because depending on what store you buy from, they could do all of this for you. So, for example, if you went to Louis Vuitton or Chanel, something more high-end, usually they have a place where you would sit down, they fill out all that stuff for you, they take your passport, enter all your information in, and then print it all out, so you don't have to fill out anything, which is awesome. And also, if you have shopped at multiple stores and say like all 3 stores that you shopped at use Global Blue, you just need to put all of those receipts filled out into one envelope. So that's a little tip, because I thought I had to put one in each individual one, and you don't have to. It can go on the same one. But if you have a Premier Tax Free and then a Global Blue, you have to separate those. So, okay. Once you've had that from the store and you've either gotten a filled out form or you filled it out yourself, you need to bring all of this to the airport, your last port of departure. Each airport is a little different, and depending on the airport, usually most airports have you do it after security, the tax-free counter, and you bring your item and your receipt to show the counter. Some airports have the Global Blue or the Premier Tax-Free stations there, but if they don't, an airport personnel will check your item sometimes. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do, and you have to show it. They stamp it, and then you can either mail it off, or if there is a counter, you can get your money right then and there in cash, or you can get it as a refund in credit. But cash is obviously immediately, but credit, it'll take a while. And we've noticed that the tax-free companies do take a small portion of your refund, which is unfortunate, but it does happen. And so even though most of the time you pay 20%, you only get back maybe 11 to 15%. Still good, still not, zero, but I just wanted to put that out there. So, In the case of an item that you're checking, or in the case of an item that you've purchased needs to be checked, whether because it's liquids or it's sharp or big, and you need to check it before, and so you cannot bring it into security, look for the area in the airport that is before security. Usually it's not very manned, so you have to call somebody, but I have had to do that before, and it's not that difficult. You just need to know where it is ahead of time. And I do want to put in there, no matter which airport you go to, make sure you give yourself enough time. I know that most of the time it is 30 minutes to an hour suggested minimum, just because you have to take time to find the location. There could be a lot of people waiting. You just never know, and you don't want to walk away not being able to claim your money. So I have seen people go frantically standing in line and like looking at their watch, like we have to catch our plane, and you don't want to be like that. So make sure you give plenty of time. I've seen actually in Sweden, it was a before security table where they did the tax-free, and it took only 5 minutes. So you rather have more time than not enough, just putting it out there. So definitely give yourself enough time. Also, if you did request a refund on your credit card, it could take 2 weeks up to maybe even 2 months. Just keep an eye out. Sometimes it just takes a little longer, because depending on the company or depending on which country you purchased it could take a little bit more time to process. So the second location that I wanted to talk about is actually Hong Kong. Hong Kong is really easy. They don't charge sales tax, which means you don't need to claim sales tax. We're done. Yeah, so it's very simple. I had never had an issue in Hong Kong. It's what you see is what you get, and you don't have to worry about claiming your tax back, which is awesome. And yeah, the next location I wanted to talk about is Australia. Now, Australia is the one that I just came back from, which is why I kind of delayed until I got back, because I wanted to share it here as well. I remember Australia was kind of a different one. I've usually gone to the EU to do this, but Australia, it's actually quite easier, I think, and they're less finicky. Maybe because it's just one country versus multiple countries, so it kind of smooth things over. But they don't really have an agent or a company that does this. I think the company or the people that do it is the government, so they don't take a cut out of it. It's pretty quick. We get ours in 3 days. So some of the things I found out is that no matter where you shop in Australia, you must spend in one receipt 300 Australian dollars or more to get a tax-free refund. And so you just tell them at the store what you want to get, and then they print you out a receipt. It has the ABN, it's a number, I think it's a business number, and you need that, and then you need the date, and then you also need optional, I think, well, it's like an invoice number, and then you have to have the item, and then like list out how much it cost, and then you fill this. There's no form, they don't give you a form, you just go to the airport and you fill it out. However, I found that you could do it online, well, more specifically on your app. So download the TRS, I think it's TRS, I'll put it up here, app on your phone, and then you can fill out your information, which is like your name, your passport, your date of purchase, and then your date of departure, as well as other information like the receipt information, the store, the amount you paid, and then also how you would like to receive that refund. At the end of all that, they'll give you a QR code, which you just bring to the airport, and they scan it, stamp it, you're done. And it's very simple, but you do have to keep in mind, again, you have to bring the item with your receipt, with your passport and your boarding pass to the airport. And I did it after security walkthrough, but I know that if you needed to check your bags, there is one before security, and that you have to go find and get it done, right? So you have to show your items if they ask you. I've done it a few times. They've only asked to see my items once, but when they asked, you have to show it, and it has to be unused and new and unused, and you have to take it out of the country. Another thing that I've learned about Australia is because I was there for so long, you have to purchase the item within 60 days of your departure date. So since I was there before 60 days, I cannot purchase anything for tax-free until I kind of hit that 60-day mark. If you leave Australia but you come back, you have to pay taxes back on the item if the item is over $900. So if you bought something at in an airport duty free, you're more than welcome to not pay, well, you're not charged tax, but if you take it out and you leave it out, that's fine. If you take it out and you bring it back in and it's more than 900, then you have to pay taxes on that amount. So it doesn't matter if it's let's say $1,000, you have to pay tax on the full $1,000. It's a little different in the US, so I'll touch on that in just a bit. If you do plan to go in and out of Australia, that's something you have to pay attention to. Now, I've mentioned you can get stuff at duty-free stores or at the airport, which is duty-free, which means you don't need to claim your tax back because it's already taken out of the equation. So you don't need to stand in line, you don't need to fill any forms, it's just tax-free. I hope that makes sense because I'm going to move on to the second part of my video, which is about coming back into the US with your items and paying a custom duty. Again, I'm not an expert on the custom duty law or anything, but I have read a few things and I've experienced a few things while traveling back into the US. And the US allows you to bring in items up to $800 per person if it's a personal item and it is, and it is not alcohol, cigarettes, and wine, I think. Those have different exemptions. You are only allowed 1 liter of liquor and like 200 cigarettes or something like that. But I never really buy those, so I don't know. I'm talking about more just other items that add up to a certain amount. And that is, like I said, $800 if you're a citizen of the United States. And if you do more than that, then you pay duty on the first $1,000 that you're over. And it's usually, I think, 3% starting, but it could change from there. So what happens when you land in the US, or right before you land, is you're given a landing card and you're supposed to fill out like your name and detail and how long you were away for and where you're traveling from. But you also have to list the items that you're bringing in and their estimated value. If the value, like I said, exceeds $800, you will be taxed, or you could be taxed. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes if you're just a little bit over, they don't look too much into it. And sometimes if you are really over, they look into it. They may still excuse you depending on, I don't know, the items or the purpose and everything like that. One really neat thing about the US is that, unlike Australia, you walk in together as a group if you're the same household, which means you have to be living in under the same roof, and you're coming back together on the same flight. When you do that, you can come in together, which means you can combine your allowance. So I think I read on the website, on the US custom website, which I'll link below so you can read more on your own about it too. But it's the example there was if you have 4 people coming in together, you could have exemption of up to $4,000. So you can combine it. So like, let's say you have an item that is $2,000. That will actually be covered and you won't have to pay duty on it. So that's one neat thing to take advantage of, especially if you're traveling in a bigger group. You could combine them. You have to go in at you have to go up to the counter at the same time, but you could combine your allowance. An important thing I think goes without saying is to be truthful on these forms. If you're unsure, you can put it down. It's better that they excuse it and you didn't need to write it than if you didn't tell them and they find out. I don't think it should be that difficult, and 3% does sound like more money than you want to pay, but it's better than getting caught and doing having to pay a fine. I think the most important thing is to ask yourself why you're buying something. For me, a lot of the times it's because it is cheaper in different countries. If an item is manufactured or produced in that country, it's generally cheaper, and sometimes the exchange rate helps, and sometimes getting the VAT or tax back helps. But I think overall it should be something that you love and that you want, and that buying that item on your trip, it's gonna make it an even better experience. It's gonna have memories attached to the item and everything. And the way I see it is, if I see an item that probably, let's say, cost, $1,500 here, but if I went to France and it only cost $900, I already know that I saved money and I get to get a really nice item as a souvenir from my trip. But if I can get the tax refunded back to me, even better. And then, you know, if I don't have to pay custom coming back, then I'll save even more. But I know that I should not expect the VAT to come back in case there is an issue, or that I won't get charged custom duty when I get back. So if your purchase hinges on getting the value tax back, and then not being charged a custom duty when you get into the US, then I probably wouldn't buy it, just because nothing is for sure. However, if you're buying it for the experience because you want it, I think then no matter what happens, you're in a good spot. Of course, like I said, I do like to save money, so I'm going to try my very best to get all of the VAT refunded, or, you know, GST refunded, but I definitely want to emphasize to not stress yourself out too much, because you are going on vacation. It should be a fun experience. I think that's all the information I have today. I hope I didn't miss anything. I have everything written out here. Oh my god, there's so many pages, and I hope I didn't miss anything. But I try to give as much information as I can, and I know that while I talked a lot, I don't know everything, so hopefully this has given you an idea of what you might need to know, what you already know and confirmed it. But if not, I'll list the custom link below so that you can take a look, and hopefully that will help you out on your next trip. If you have any other questions that I did not touch on, or if I confused some of you, I'll try to answer or clarify it if you leave a comment below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in my next video. Happy shopping!